Recognizing the problem and the need to keep rural hospitals viable, created a new designation a year ago. Announced it just a year ago this month, the Rural Emergency Hospital. Next slide. So this slide is doesn't tell you anything you don't already know. Population decreases, particularly in the Clifton Pine area, with the closure of major employers a few decades ago, have had a really dramatic impact on the economy and households. Fewer jobs, fewer affiliated businesses, fewer residents, fewer students. Ultimately, has created a lessened ability to support a full-service hospital. Next slide, please. So, how is the hospital used? You'll see here that utilization in 2018 to 20 shows just slightly over one patient a day. Let me provide a little additional detail. The hospital has 20 beds. 10 beds have been dedicated to long-term care patients, essentially functioning like a nursing home. The other 10 beds have been for acute care. The 10 beds we talk about here, or the one admission bay, is on the acute care side. So basically 1/10 of our resource had been used on a daily basis in 2018 through 2020. The numbers for 21 and 22 are during the pandemic. We didn't treat active COVID patients, but all the hospitals around us, as far away as Albany and Burlington, when they were full, but they still had patient care needs that we could handle at the level of care we could provide, we took overflow patients from hospitals throughout the Midwest. But even then, to see our daily patient count didn't even make it to 4. So those beds are really underutilized. And in 2023, with transition back to normal, you can see the admit count is going back down again. So the question you might have is, why is it so hard to admit acute care patients to Clifton Pine? The answer is there's multiple answers. We're remote. We're in the middle of nowhere, and there's a lot of competition for healthcare services. Stand, Governor, Carthage, Florida, Watertown, Adirondack. We don't do general or specialty surgeries. We don't deliver babies. We don't do complex procedures that might require an acute admission. So those are the things that drive inpatient stays, and we don't do them. And that's how you get numbers of 1 a day. So let's see. So what does that mean financially? Next slide, please. So these numbers are interim financials through November. You can see that in 2023 through November, we took in 7.5 million, but it cost us 10.2 to provide patient care. So as of the end of November, we were looking at a $2.7 million. I saw the interim financials for December a few days ago, and they weren't any better. The loss actually increased to slightly over $3 million. Now, we ran a projection out to 2028 using our historical patient loads just to see what the numbers look like. And it didn't improve it. We're still showing a negative 35% margin, so there's no improvement there. And we did it really as an academic exercise because, frankly, we wouldn't survive it. We wouldn't survive until 2028 anyway. Like I said, we don't change course now, we're probably not making it through 2025. So this was really just an academic exercise. Next slide, please. Now, I mentioned that half of our beds are long-term care beds. We really spent a long time talking about long-term care beds. Someone's grandmother or grandfather in town. These are very sensitive issues, and we treated them that way. So we really looked long and hard at that. We were able to break out the long-term care revenues and costs from our consolidated financials. And you can see $300,000 to $400,000 in losses. Leading up to the meeting in Star Lake, I had a discussion with the former board chairman, and he said, oh yeah, 15 years ago, we looked at long-term care. We were losing $300,000 a year back then. So clearly this is a structural budget issue that we've never been able to overcome. And it really puts us at a serious disadvantage. Next slide, please. So this slide shows an example of what numbers would have looked like if in 2023 we were already a rural emergency hospital. So in this, we removed the acute care and long-term care revenue and expenses. We added in the enhanced reimbursement from Medicare that we would get as a rural emergency hospital. And you can see it turns almost a $3 million operating deficit into a couple $100,000 worth of profit. And we ran a little scenario out 5 years using some, again, our patient loading, our outpatient loaded statistics, and it stays positive. So, Dave, you want to jump ahead a couple slides? So, Cook and Fine Hospital has changed over the years. In 1951, when it opened, the community was thriving. They had 4 doctors. It was a full service hospital for the community. But that changed as the community changed. We haven't delivered a baby in over 40 years. We haven't done a surgery in over 30. We closed a dental office 25 years ago. So this is just one more iteration in trying to stay alive in an ever-changing state and local economy and healthcare economy as the healthcare industry. So what does rural emergency hospital mean for Cook and Fine? Dave, could you jump ahead, please? It will, the change in designation will prevent the closure. It will allow us to really focus on our emergency and outpatient care, which is 95% of what we do anyway. That's where most of our patient contact is today. And it will allow us to achieve long-term financial stability through the new program payments. And they're really in two places. The slide notes that there's a $3 million operating subsidy that Medicare will provide. They also, what we failed to put on here, each of the services, patient visits that are approved, say it's a $100 visit, they'll actually pay us $105. Now, a 5% bump up doesn't sound like much one at a time, but 10,000 patient visits a year, suddenly that 5% kiss from Medicare, that adds up. So we believe that this change will really allow us to focus on what we need, what we can do well, and what's important to the community. It'll keep the hospital open. It'll keep our critical services available, and allow us to actually expand services. One more, please. So what we will continue to provide, we will continue to provide 24/7 emergency care. In our new emergency room, and I'll give you a little update on our capital project when we finish this, we will have observation care. So if whatever emergency treatment requires some additional time in the hospital, we'll have 3 private rooms, private baths, private showers for observation care. We'll have new lab and imaging space. We'll be connected to the primary care space that is heavily utilized. We will continue to provide outpatient rehab, both physical therapy and occupational therapy. Our behavioral health numbers continue to grow. We have a counselor on staff. We will continue with telehealth specialty services. I'd also like to mention, recently we initiated a partnership with County Social Services, and we made an office available for their staff to be on site a couple of days a week. Patients to make sure that they are registered appropriately. And it is tremendous patient. Next slide, please. We will be expanding some services. We have just started mobile mammogram. We have just started up a pediatric rehab service, and we think we are the only hospital in Jefferson, Lewis, or St. Counties that do that. So we've actually got a pretty wide catchment area for potential services there. As part of our emergency department expansion, we have now a signed agreement with Upstate Medical Center guaranteeing placement for trauma victims. Up until now, if we have a trauma victim come in, we're searching around. If they can't take them in Potsdam, we're looking at Watertown, we're looking in Albany, we're looking in Burlington. This guarantees us a placement. So that's very valuable for us. Potential additional services, we're looking at going back to providing dental services, a level of service called convenience care, which is a nod to the some of the residents of Star Lake and Cranberry Lake, that their primary care physician may be in Rochester or Buffalo or Philadelphia, PA, but if they get sick while they're spending their summer, their insurance company or Medicare gives them a hard time when they come to the hospital. So we believe we have found a model that allows us to serve that population as well. So we hope to be rolling that out shortly. Let's see. Now, what we can't do with this new designation is we can't provide acute care. We have to discontinue acute care services and long-term care services. So, as I mentioned, we have 10 long-term care residents that are someone's grandmother or grandfather. That was a difficult part of our decision-making process, but a necessary part of it. The good news is our corporate partner, Samaritan Medical Center, has offered to take all 10, open up a wing at Samaritan Keep Home in Watertown. So there'll be a little Clifton Fine community on that wing if they all choose to go. And at this point, we believe 9 of the 10 have agreed to go. You want to jump ahead a couple slides, Dave? The other change that we'll see, if we don't have people in beds 24 hours a day, that means we don't need a food service staff. We probably have less need for some of the environmental staff because we're not changing sheets and cleaning rooms and bathrooms as much. We don't need as many CNAs and LPNs. We've met with the staff. Clearly not everybody's happy about it, but they understand the big picture and why we're going in this direction. And again, Samaritan has had a long list of job openings for the last couple of years. Their HR department was on campus last week, seeing where Clifton Fine employees can fit into their job opening. So we think while we will be decreasing, it looks like 12 to 14 FTEs with a number of part-timers in there. It's probably actually 22 or 24 people. We think many of them will transfer down to Samaritan. So the schedule for this conversion. You jump there again. We are in the stakeholder notification and community forum phase of this. As I mentioned, we've had 2 public sessions plus a presentation to the town council. And I would say, without reservation, I think they went very well. That's not to say everybody's happy. Families that have a loved one that needs to be moved out have not been happy about it. Understandable, but not happy about it. We had a few folks that just don't like change. So you let them get their gripes out, even though there's no solution to their gripe. But I would say 95% of the people at these public forums have said, we're making the right decision, preserve the emergency room, preserve the clinic, preserve the outpatient services, and march on. So we are taking the input we received at public forums, we're including that in our certificate of need submission to the health department, which we hope we can get in March. We figure the Department of Health will take 90 days or so. And we're hoping that state's approval will trigger a federal designation approval somewhere around the 1st of July. And that becomes a changeover in status. Right along with that, we have another timeline up there on the next slide. So in the midst of all of this, we've still been working on our capital program, our capital plan for a new emergency. I was here a couple of years ago, talked to you about the plan. We were very generous with a grant of ARPA funds to support it. In the midst of all of that, though, prices for supplies, materials, labor went right through the roof, as we all know, partly down. We kept designing down to the budget we could afford, and our original plan of 7,800 square feet got down to 2,800 square feet. And we were almost at the point of saying, why bother? But anyone who's been in the Clifton Fine emergency room, all 1,200 square feet of it from 1951, knows that that is not the modern standard of healthcare, and we had to figure out a way through this. So our CEO had submitted a second grant application to the health department for general infrastructure repairs and upgrades at the hospital, which was awarded. And through a number of meetings, good-natured badgering and arm twisting, convinced the health department that while we legally couldn't combine the two grants, the first one for the emergency department plus the second one, if we were given the flexibility to use them in concert with each other to find the most efficient use of funds to deliver upgraded healthcare services, blah, blah, blah. And the state said yes, and they put it in writing. So we immediately went back to the drawing board and are finalizing contract documents with the state health department for what will be about 10,000 square foot addition. It will include three private emergency rooms, 3 rooms, trauma room, 3 observation rooms, a decontamination room, a modern nursing station. It will include the new space for radiology. It will include new space for lab draws, waiting areas, everything you would expect to see in a modern hospital. In addition, space in the existing hospital will be renovated. So, for example, our physical therapy department is in a spot tacked at the end of our maintenance garage in a different building. We're going to renovate space, we need physical therapy. We will create new space for our pharmacy. We'll create new and large space for our laboratory processing space. We're expecting to break ground on this. We plan on putting the project out to bid in February. We expect to have numbers back for a contract signing, both with contractors and the health department, probably April, May or June groundbreaking. And as you can see here, basically wrapping up September of 25. So this summer, between the licensing conversion and the capital program, It's going to be busy for the next several months. So, did I miss anything, Larry? Go ahead.
No, I don't think you did at all, Tom. I thank you for coming down. And one of the reasons that I actually, having attended two of the presentations in regards to the change from from critical access to a rural emergency hospital. You know, there was a lot of apprehension in the room because you know how rumors start and folks and there were I think the biggest there were two biggest concerns that I heard was the potential for the hospital closing, and the other one, which was just as large, was folks that have been there in the long-term care for a number of years, and folks were concerned about you know what's going to happen to their family, friends. And at the end of both presentations, there was applause. It was applause and thank yous for the diligence and the time that was put into hopefully keeping the hospital functioning. And you know, when you think about a rural hospital like Clifton Pine, yeah, the population, you know, we've got a school population up there. It's gone from 1,100 to 300. Major employers that were there are gone. However, we've got a large number of summer residents, And one of the things that a lot of those folks look at is the hospital. What is there for emergency care? And it's not just summer residents, it's folks that come in the fall, it's snowmobilers, it's all the tourism. So again, and thank you for the what was here, Lee, for the collaboration between our Department of Social Services and Clifton Pine Hospital as well. So
Any questions?
Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, what's the distance from Smyrna and Clifton Pine? How far are folks in? 10 minutes?
Hour and from
Hour and 10.
Hour and
Okay,
10 minutes.
Yeah, that's about the same as. It's a tough one.
It is. And we, like I said, we had a lot of discussion about it because it's an imposition on family who want to go visit family. We were reminded that we only have 10 folks in here, and that senior citizens already somewhere else. So feeling compassion about the families of the 10 that are immediately impacted. We're hearing from other families saying, hey, I've been driving 2 hours to visit grandma for the last 5 years. So it's a real mixed message. Frankly, it's a real challenge. It's a challenge for every small personal facility.
Single answer. I like it.
Mr. Smithers.
Thank you. What is it that makes it so difficult for nursing homes to survive, like the one in Governor, which closed not too long ago, within the last 10 years? So they got shipped all over, the patients over there. You know, we had to drive over an hour to get to Lowville, whereas we were able to visit my father every day when they were right in Governor. What is it that makes it hard for these to survive? Is it the Medicare reimbursement rates? And what can be done? Is there anything we can do to encourage them
it
to
certainly is
change those?
the Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement rates. Can't cite numbers right off the top of my head, but I can give you the general feel for it. If we took all the revenue that we received for all 10 of our residents on a daily basis it doesn't add up to one acute care admission. So we get paid about a tenth, not even a tenth of the amount for long-term care, acute care. And I think it is a symptom of hospital-based nursing homes. I'm not sure it's the same situation in private standalone nursing homes, because obviously they continue to thrive. It's the hospital-based nursing homes that I think have suffered the most on this because of how they are. And as to how do we fix that? Yeah, that's way more than 10 minutes. Mr. Hall.
Tom, thanks for being here to present. You said New York State created the REH designation a year or so ago.
So the federal government created it a year ago. They've been working on it a couple of years. They enacted it or rolled it out January of 23, but then each state has to approve it. So we immediately went to work with our state legislative delegation, and it was, I think, approved May of 23 in New York State.
Okay. I assume you're in a cohort of similarly positioned small hospitals in the state. Are you in contact with anyone else who's in this process as well? How is that going? Is there?
The answer is yes, and it's a very small group. Despite the fact that I said there's 50 rural hospitals that are in potential financial jeopardy, there's only one other that is pursuing this at this time. And our CEO and their CEO have been talking all the way through, because they're actually about a month ahead of us in the process. So we've been seeing where they potentially stub their toe and where we're not going to. So, yeah.
Mr. Webster.
I missed, you said it was an hour and 10 minutes. Might be able to place an employee so they don't have to drive as far.
Not that I know, because between here and Watertown, between Starlight and Watertown, you got Carthage. They have their own hospital, their own clinics, and then you kind of get into Samaritan's service territory beyond that.
It sounds like it's the best of a very bad situation. I mean, it'd be better to have, the year and all that stuff they're prepared that have nothing. It's unfortunate for a lot of people, but no longer there's going to be a lot of people. Sounds like a really pulled kind of a rabbit out of a hat trying to figure out how to keep going.
We did. We were very fortunate that the federal government rolled out this new program a year ago, because frankly, we were scratching our heads saying, what do we do now?
Well, thank you guys.
Mr. Burke.
Certainly your back was against the wall, you had to do something. I guess I'm wondering though about loss of function. Portion of your function or some of the acute care maybe had it here. I guess I'm wondering, what does that look like for our county? If we be concerned about the loss of healthcare?
Well, we talked about that as well, and I think the numbers tell the story. In 2018, 19, and 20, we had, out of our 10 acute care beds, we had an average of 1 patient a day. That's some pretty expensive overhead to carry for 1 patient a day. Maintaining 9 empty beds that you're cleaning around, you're staffing around, you're heating around, you're providing doctors. So I would respond by saying, I think St. Lawrence Health Systems is doing a great job providing beds for the majority of the population. I think we've got good coverage in Governor as well. So what you're really losing is 1 bed a day. I think the other hospitals have got that covered. So I don't see it as an issue.
Sure. Plus the 8 years.
The nursing home beds, back, it's probably June or July last year, we talked to the state health department. 53 empty nursing home beds in St. Lawrence County. Because we actually inquired about, could we set up our own freestanding nursing home to take care of our 10? And the answer didn't come back official. The phone call answer was, no, you're not going that way because there are 53 empty nursing homes. They weren't going to license 10 more when there were 53 already.
Sure. Just one more question. Do you report positions or?
As of today, we have one doctor on staff. And he is employed through an agency that works nationwide. So he is our primary physician, and when he takes a week off a month, that agency provides us a second doctor. When we make this transition, he will become an employee. All of our other providers, nurse practitioners and physician assistants are employed by that.
So that adds to your reimbursement charge. That'll be charged. Thank you.
Just Reagan.
Thanks, Tom, forgive me for not recognizing you when you were in the hallway. I just want to echo what the others have said. Thank you for your efforts. I think we're faced with incredibly difficult choices, and I think they're lucky to have you, and so thank you for your efforts. And while it's certainly difficult, and you've certainly led the board to inescapable decisions that probably people have been wanting to see, but sometimes reality comes calm.
Any other questions? I'd like to thank you for being proactive and not letting the hospital get to a point where it had to close down. You've got quite the project in front of you and the hurdles. But it's nice that you keep all the critical functions in the area. Thank you.
And thank you for allowing me to come out tonight and talk to you, but really thank you for being a great supporter. Your ARPA grant from a couple of years ago is going to go a long way with this, the new emergency department. And just knowing that we're kind of standing side by side with the county means a lot to the board and to our CEO here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to resolution. First is highway, Don Chambers. First resolution, authorizing the chair to sign an agreement between St. Lawrence County Department of Highways and the United States Department of Agricultural, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, Wildlife Services. Can I get a motion? Mr. Smithers, and second, Mr. Forsythe. Go ahead, Don.
Yes, thank you. We've been doing the agreement with the USDA for several years now, and we have found it very effective in management of primarily beaver. They actually obtain permits with New York State DEC, do all the reporting that's required, nuisance permits. And so beaver can cause issues, drainage, and needed service.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Next resolution is modifying the 2024 budget for the Department of Highways for Lazy River Road Bridge over Grass River in 3341820 pin 775332. And I get a motion. Mr. Forsythe, the second, Mr. Sheridan. Go ahead.
Chairman, may I speak in general to all these resolutions? They have a similar issue,
Yes,
rather than going through that
yes,
each one. Thank you. The adjustments to the county budget for these Bridge New York projects. Basically, as a result of the Bridge New York funding announcement coming in basically October, and then at that point, then needing to get the projects out to bid, advertise that amount of time, then do the openings late in 2023. At that point, basically the budget process has been completed, and so we have a little bit of a few funds that we are short. And that's why I'm asking on these various projects to take funds out of fund balance to do those, because again, it was just an estimate at the time on these projects. And some additional costs. We are fortunate to address these projects in the 95% funded through the Bridge New York program, which is federal funds that are passed through the state of New York. So 5% local match.
Any questions? Well, thank you for that, Don. That was my question. Appreciate it.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I did.
Yes, we did. Okay.
All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
And we'll go to the next one, modifying the 2024 budget for the Department of Highways for County Route 35 Bridge over Trout Brook, bin 334, 1700, pin 775, 394. Can I get a motion? The Forsythe, Mr. Smithers.
Yes, basically the same, the same issue that I just discussed. And just on the resolution before and this one, the primary expense that we are looking at is for steel inspection, implant inspection. And on the Lazy River Road project, the steel is being fabricated in Pennsylvania, so we need to hire a consulting firm to go in and inspect the steel in Pennsylvania. For the County Road 35 project, the steel is coming from a plant in Ohio, same thing there. So we have to provide steel inspection in the plant, 100% inspection for welds, and all those things have to be by a certified weld inspector, and that, so to assure quality.
Any questions? What about a lead time on this? You're gonna have enough time?
We've already obtained the necessary quotes.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, modifying the 2024 budget for the Department of Highways for County Route 22 Bridge over Sawyer Creek, bin 334, 0950, pin 775, 425. Can I get a motion? Mr. Burke, and second by Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you. This project is a Bridge New York project, 95% funded by the federal government. This is a brand new project that we will be starting the design on. So this is for the design portion of this project.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next one, modifying the 2024 budget for the Department of Highways for the County Route 34 Bridge over Trout Brook, bin 334, 1630, pin 775, 426. On motion, Mr. Forsythe, the second, Mr. Smithers. Go ahead.
Yes, again, this was another new project that we are awarded to start the design on. And this would be the funding for the design of that project.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Another one, modifying the 2023 budget for the Department of Highways for road maintenance work. Can I get a motion? Mr. Forsythe, second, Mr. Webster. Go ahead, Don.
Yes. During the 2023 budget year, basically midway through the year, New York State DOT informed us that the equipment rental rates that we should be charging internally needed to be changed from rates that were last updated in 2017 to the 2023 FEMA rates. So when we were putting the 2023 budget together, the only equipment rates that I had available and ones that were we were instructed to use were from 2017. New York State DOT decided they were not going to come up with a new table for equipment rental charges, internal rental charges. So they adopted the FEMA rates. So this is a modification due to the DOT updating rates via FEMA's. So that these were decreasing lines in our winter maintenance materials, and snow machinery rental and appropriations, and increasing machinery rental in our maintenance area. Because we've had luckily a light start of the season for snow removal in end of 2023.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carried. Thank you. Don, you have a discussion on Bridge New York, the culvert New York funding?
Yes, thank you. As you can see, sometimes the funding comes in, and luckily we're getting the funds to cover some significant capital projects within the department. In order for our grants to be successful, and we've just applied for another batch of Bridge New York and Culvert New York projects after we met with DOT on suggested projects. One of the items that has come up is that DOT has suggested that I have a discussion with the board and basically get a nod from the legislature that if the grant funding through Bridge New York falls short of what the project cost would be, that we would either use our local CHIPS funding, that is basically funding from the state to fund the other, any amount over what the Bridge New York grant is, or other local funding sources. That would help DOT know that we assure that when they award us a project, that we would actually build the project. It would help us be successful.
Any discussion?
So, if I may,
Okay. Go ahead, Joe. Mike.
so what we're looking at then is footing the bill for.
If,
Bottom line,
yes, sir.
Okay.
If we, either by shifting your CHIPS funding that we would use on other projects that we normally fund to fund the shortfall on the project. Right now, they have a ceiling of $5 million on grant applications for structures. With that ceiling not being adjusted for several years, leaving it at 5 million, I can potentially see where some bridge projects may go over the $5 million cap. So anything above the 5 million, we would have to have a way to show the state of New York that we would be funding that portion of the project. One of the alternatives that we can do is we can take the CHIPS funding, because that's a separate from the federal funding, and pay the balance with that CHIPS funding for shortfall.
with the CHIPS funding, would we still be liable for that 10-year period? Could we use it on something that 8 years ago we worked on? And
Well, typically when we're doing like a bridge replacement, we haven't spent CHIPS on it for probably.
well, and that was the other question, is how come all of a sudden we're using CHIP money for bridges? And that's because the state needs the money, obviously.
I'm not saying that we have to use the CHIPS money. I'm just saying that $5 million is the cap. So say we get a grant for 5 million for a large bridge that we need to replace, and it's 6.5 million. Someplace we would have to come up with $1.5 million. And if we can't raise it from from the local tax base, one area that you could do is take it from your CHIPS funds. Not saying that's where you would have to take it, but at some point we would have to come up with the additional funding.
In the past 5 years, how many bridge jobs have we had that exceeded $5 million?
Zero.
How many do you anticipate in the next 5 years that we might see?
We may have a few, a couple, 2 or 3.
2 or 3? Okay. Any idea where in that 5 million or over that $5 million range they might come in at?
That's hard to say. We may have a structure potentially in the $8 million range. One structure. The others will be much closer, but we have a very large structure in the southern portion of the county within the park that is going to be costly.
Very good.
Well, that raises a question. You said in the park. With all of the issues that go along with working in the park, is the state going to come forward with some additional fundings to meet those little roadblocks they set up because it's in the park?
I'm not sure that they potentially could change the ceiling with the Bridge New York program. I think that would be the item that the legislature should talk with our state representatives about changing the ceiling to adjust for inflation and things over the past several years. That's really, I think, the answer is change the ceiling of these projects for, to allow us to go over $5 million. That I think is the real answer rather than using our chest.
Thank you.
But I wanted to explain.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Forsythe, you good? So this is only on projects over $5 million.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Anything else?
Or let me, or projects then, because we only get so much. That's a discussion I guess we'll have to have when we get more specific details. It's hard for me to project something that I don't really have a feel. What projects that we're going to get approved on and where the money falls.
I guess we have to pay for that 2.5 billion migrant money. Go ahead.
Don, how long has this 5 million ceiling been in place for?
Ever since Bridge New York started, so it's been several years. So basically pre-COVID, the Bridge New York program was. So a lot of things have changed in the industry in just the last 4 or 5 years.
Everybody okay? Okay, let's move on to solid waste. Modifying the 2023 budget for the solid waste department for recycling costs and equipment repair. Can I get a motion? Mr. Lightfoot and Mr. Sheridan. Go ahead, Don.
Thank you. Yes, this resolution is to modify the 2023 budget as it says recycling costs, equipment repairs out of a pretty sizable budget. We are going to be over our budget by $66,100 in 20. We have payable and receivable pretty well under that. Recycling costs continue to be up over the $100 a ton amount. And as when we were putting the 2023 budget together, we actually had some months where recycling was a record. So there was a dramatic change in 1 year time frame from some months being a revenue to over $100 a ton at the door for disposal for recyclers.
Mr. Smithers.
Don, back, I don't know how many years ago, we used to separate some of the recyclables in with the current environment, would it be to our advantage to separate some of the recyclables out as we'd be able to get money back from those? Is that something that we should consider doing?
At this point, don't have any of the capital equipment to do that. The county, several years ago, as well as the major trash handler in the county, went to what they call their trademark as zero sort. The county made that decision to go to zero sort. So even the investment that we made at the Ogdensburg transfer station was to a zero sort facility. And I can tell you, for example, I know the town of Colton has a large capital program right now going still on that zero sort framework. So that is the kind of national standard. Sorting it basically by hand is started in the 80s and predominantly across the country. Zero sort co-mingling has been the way the market has trended. So is it possible? We could, but it would take a monumental shift in operations as far as major waste hauler and some of the towns and the county.
Mr. Lightfoot. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it so that a lot of these recyclables that were sent, or supposed recyclables, are being sent down to Liverpool for reclamation and hopefully resale? But of the stuff that goes down there, a lot of it is not recyclable. Am I correct in assuming that?
They, I think that typically they're probably running around 7-8% residual of, that's waste product that's contaminated. And that's pretty common for most zero sorts. You get, but usually less than 10%.
They're looking for ones and twos as far as and cardboard and metal, obviously. And what do they do with 5s and 7s that show up?
They're predominantly worthless.
They're predominantly what?
Worthless. They are. They have absolutely no value.
That's correct. What do they do with those things?
They have to market those, and that probably loss.
But are they not landfilling some of that stuff? A lot of that stuff?
They should not.
But aren't, okay, I got you.
I don't know exactly what they are doing. That would be something that they would have to report to the DEC.
It's my understanding that that peanut butter jug, that plastic jug that you throw away after you clean it all out, so that it's you're hopefully thinking it's going to get recycled, is going to the landfills from the Liverpool organization. So my question is this: if it can go to the landfill in Onondaga County because these people can't get rid of it and choose to put it in their landfill, why are we taking it all the way down there when it's eventually going to end up in a landfill to begin with? When Dank could very easily take those things that are going to the landfill in Onondaga County and put them in our landfill here in Rodman. It ain't like they don't have the room. So, and I'm not looking for you to step on anybody's toes, but I think it's something that the public ought to know about, and I'm hoping somebody's listening about this, because you just pointed out one of the biggest expenses that we have is transporting these things down there and then having to pay this year 10 times what we paid for last year. When you turn around and look at another county that doesn't use the zero sort system that we do, that is making upwards of over $500,000 a year on what they are taking out of their waste stream and selling. So, and I know you're aware of all. So all I'm doing really is, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I want this to get out in the public because a lot of this stuff just isn't going where we think it's going.
Right, and for, as far as, an operation of a MRF like recycling facility, is where our material is going down in Liverpool. If there's they could put in for a claim to New York State DEC for a waiver. But I can tell you the DEC would not want that to be waiver to be a long-term solution. What they would do is probably grant a short-term waiver to landfill, or in Onondaga County's case, it would be waste to energy at the Covanta plant off 481. That's where where that material would go. But it would be a short-term item, not a long-term, well, this is forever, that peanut butter jar is going to go on the waste, using your example. That would be a short-term basis until the market turns around.
If I may, one more, sir. Isn't that so that under the general municipal law, that there's a section of it that reads, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I can't remember exactly what it says, that if you have a solid waste material, that the expense of transportation and disposal of that becomes so expensive to outweigh any revenues that you would get for it, that you can landfill it.
There is provisions to get approval from, that's where the waiver that I was talking about.
Okay.
That still would need to be approved by New York State.
So, just a thought that I'm having, would we not, as a board, be smart in asking for a waiver? Because it's costing us money. There's no return on anything we're sending down there. No return at all. The only thing we're able to do is put rubber on the highway from our tires. We, when you're spending over $1 million a year to take care of this stuff, and you're not getting a penny for it, it seems like there's got to be a better way.
I think that item would need to be addressed through first with DANK. They are our planning unit. And so that would have to be something that I think would need to be a discussion between this board or the county administrator and the manager of DANK.
Would you advocate for that?
I think at this point,
Advocate for the board to go to DANK and have a chat?
I think that would be wise, Mr.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your candor.
Mr. Forsyth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dan, any idea what percentage glass makes up of recyclables weight-wise?
I'm sorry, I don't have that off the top.
Okay, but it's gotta be a big portion of it, that's the weight, right?
Glass is heavy, yes.
Okay, as the state, under that section, I think it's 120, municipal law, I know Mr. Button.
Yeah, I'd rather have the attorney speak to it.
Yeah.
The secretary law.
But, I believe glass is part of that conversation.
I think. Such as. Glass is very difficult. Bearings of machinery, because it, very fine powder, tears up the machines, and it's very hard to get it out of the zero sort once the glass shatters and basically turns to a powder. So it's problematic in the recycling stream.
And aren't there facilities now utilizing glass port fill in some of these landfills?
I don't figure the landfill. With a beneficial use determination from New York State DEC. Yes.
So it probably would be a good idea for us to down.
With our planning unit, I think.
right now as a businessman, tin can business, but the returnable on about half of them. I don't know what we're doing, so the returnable on half of them, why isn't the return on the other half? And why haven't we raised the 5 cents to 10 cents so people wouldn't keep throwing this stuff into the garbage or recycle? Yeah, I think it's all recyclable and nice. Am I right on that?
There, obviously, a lot of the, cans or bottles or whatever, end up in the recycling stream and they become. They get recycled because the aluminum, like the beverage cans, beer cans, soda cans, aluminum, easily recyclable. And so the machine down there would have an eddy current, magnet that would separate out the aluminum from the ferrous. They'd have a ferrous, magnet, eddy current magnet that would basically remove that, and that aluminum can would be recycled. And they have basically sensors, eyes that can pick out sensors that can pick out the plastics, and actually has like an air stream that pushes them out. So say it's a 2-liter soda bottle, that machine can differentiate between the different grades of plastic when it's sorted. So it would get recycled along with other, say, type 2 recyclables.
Shouldn't we be working to make all tin cans returnable with a change it from 5 to 10 cents or something? I see so many tin cans that are thrown in with zero recycle, it's beyond belief now. And I'm doing it. As a businessman, I'm saying, that what am I gonna do with this tin can? Put it in zero recyclable, and as a kid, I had an opportunity to make some money. If it was 2 cents a bottle and it was really young, 5 cents, and we still have 5 cents today. And I don't think we can drive down the street in most villages, especially in the villages, the college kids, where you haven't got cans on the street.
That rate is set by the state of New York, so that would be, Mr. Fay, that would be something the state has set up, that 5 cent return. So that's something that would be legislation action by the state of New York.
Thank you.
Mr. Webster. I was in the one for years. And wasn't gonna bring it up, but really had curious about some questions. They used to have 55-gallon drums and all the glass would go in it. Well, once every 2 weeks, I bring 12, 14, 55-gallon drums up to Potters and drop them off. There's glass up there. Have you ever been up to Potters?
No, I have not been to Potters, but we utilize Potters products at the Department of Highway.
They get constantly tractor trailers from Canada, which is nothing but smashed glass. I know Kiwanis used to get not a lot, but a few bucks off each barrel to help out. They were paying them for the glass. Would it be something the county could utilize, especially being this close? Right here where they could separate the glass, which would, because you're paying by weight when you bring it downstate, right?
Right, but that's part of the problem, separating glass out of the commingled recyclables. You basically need to pull all the other components out.
Could they do it when they're, I know it's kind of a big thing, but it's a lot of weight. Wouldn't you say that's probably a lot of the weight of stuff going down?
It's some of the way. I think that you've got more and more items have gone to plastic containers. I think when you go into your grocery store, you'll see more and more things in plastic containers. It can be used, glass can be used more or less like for in landfills. Recycling glass is more cost effective than most to start with the materials and to take on the expenses. Going through the glass and recycle.
No, Potters pays for it. Sure. And it is close, very close to where we are. I don't know if that's something, somehow you could fit in there, find out the cost of it, if they legally would buy it. It'd be
The problem is it's not separated, sir. Yeah, that's the problem. We get it all commingled, so. The process that we're using at this point and that we've invested a lot of money in, and also, like I said, our local major hauler has invested in some of our accounts. For example, they've gone down that route of zero, basically the commingled product. So it would take a fundamental shift in how the county does business. Is it possible? Of course it's possible, but it would take a significant investment. That's all.
Mr. Smith.
Don, it seems like we're talking about the question of who does the separating. The public, consumer, or the county. County would involve quite a lot of work. You mentioned a significant investment. And there is transportation involved. So in Jefferson County, this is done by the public. They separate it out. They have their different containers that they bring their recyclables to. So I don't like the idea of mandating, and we've had this discussion that it's a public attitude, a public desire to do this. And rather than mandate, is there any possibility that we could have some kind of voluntary thing where the public that wants to do that could do that, and we could accept those separated recyclables rather than mandating it and still maintain the zero sort for the majority of the public that doesn't have any wish to do this recycling?
Yeah, it's say like a cardboard container.
Yeah.
That's. If we had.
Like at the
bin
transfer
for-
stations.
At the transfer station. You don't have a roll off container. Then. Ship, that's possible.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. John, one more thing. Mattress recycling.
And I think the county administrator was going to start on. correct?
Yes. So about 10 days ago, approached by our executive director, Paul Ferrone, with some activity that Dank's been looking at, not unlike conversation we've just been having, though this conversation is specific to mattress recycling. And as indicated by Dank, for up until 28 years ago, they had mattresses going into the waste stream. And there's been an effort to extract mattresses and recycle them separately. However, that cost has, of course, like everything else, gone up. And so Dank has done some work to evaluate the potential of reintroducing mattresses into the waste stream, and evaluated the cost savings that they may be able to rededicate to removing other items from the waste stream. So one of the things they wanted to make sure that St. Lawrence County, they worked with Jefferson, worked with Lewis, identified there's no objection there. As of April 1st, they would like to cease collecting mattresses specifically and shipping those. I believe we ship to Tonawanda right now for the recycling we have. And there's approximately a cost around $300,000 annually for that. Now they've done some metrics, and I'll share them all with you about the carbon footprint associated with loading the mattresses and driving them actually depletes the value that you receive from recycling the mattresses. So their interest is in returning those. My question to him was, how much life does that take off of the new cell, the landfill that we have in Rodman? His indication, at least at this point, is 1.5 years associated with the return of these materials. However, in their efforts to focus on other items, removing them from the waste stream, they believe they may also be able to reduce that 1.5 years that would be added to the life associated with mattresses. So certainly welcome your questions. This is something that they are the experts in. They have done the studies with. I'll share those with you. But it is financially advantageous as well, I think, as minimal impact from the perspective of reintroducing mattresses to the landfill as of April 1st. Questions?
Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ruth. Two things. Are they talking about shredding these mattresses, or they put them in whole?
So they have talked about this replacement business in Harrisville, purchasing a shredder of sorts to shred the mattresses and then dispose of them. However, that increases the cost above what we pay now to actually shred them and dispose of them that way.
Okay, and at the landfill now, to take a mattress, it's $15 per mattress? Is that still the case?
I believe it's 15, maybe.
So would that offset it, or would we still charge for taking in the mattress?
I don't think our rates would change. I
Okay.
think we would see a reduction in the cost. They would
Just
look
so
to,
that
yes,
we're-
they would look to either the advertising or some other effort towards reducing other items going into the waste stream.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll share those totals with you. They indicate the increase in tonnage would be 453 tons per year from the 3-county region, or 3% of the total volume. So if you have any questions after you have a chance to review this, let me know.
Mr. Lightfoot?
I don't have a question, I have a comment.
Sure.
Over the years, we've seen solid waste go from separating the different stuff,
Items, yep.
if you will, to the zero sort. And the zero sort is really a son of a gun of a thing to deal with, particularly for ground up paper. Okay, you run your paper through a shredding machine out here, throw it in, and I do this, throw it in with my regular recyclables, that whole bag is not being touched. The whole bag is contaminated. By the same token, you look backwards a little bit further, now we have to pull electrical and computer stuff and phone stuff and copier stuff out of the waste stream. We're doing it with mattresses. We do it with refrigerators. We do it with cardboard. Cardboard is a valuable, saleable item. It's worth something. We're not, because it's all going in, you know, under the same load. Can't you just look forward and see, in addition to that, food's going to get composted? Can't you just see it going the other way now, where the next thing will be perhaps taking glass out of the waste stream, taking metal out of it? It's a never-ending circle that we are in. And I think that we can get a jump on this if we plan for it, talk to Dave, see if we can come up with a plan that somehow gets this weighty stuff out of our transportation issues going down and coming back from Liverpool. That's a big expense. And if we could ease up on that, where we don't have to send a truck down there every single day of the week, maybe we could get away with 3 or 4 times a week. I don't know, but I think too that with the way DEC operates, it's just around the corner before something else is going to come out of that waste stream that we're going to be responsible for. That's my comment.
So there's the metals recyclable, all your tin, your paper is recyclable. I know paper mills, they use some of that. As Glenn said, the glass goes, you can go to Potters. Now, if that was to all come out of the recyclables that go down to Liverpool, would they raise our rates because they're just getting the plastic and not the other monetary recyclables?
Yes, the formulation is based on what the average American basically has in their recycling. So they've got their business model built on sorting the entire amount. So they figure, well, we're gonna get this much percentage cardboard. So the whole, it's based on commodities. So if you're not supplying them with all the commodity that you're supposed to be supplying, they could upcharge us. Absolutely.
Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you. And that's kind of where I'm leaning, and what Mr. Lightfoot had just said was, by the time we go around and try to make a change, a year ago, we were making money on recyclables, right?
Right.
Now all of a sudden we're losing money drastically. It changes so fast. By the time we go through the process of doing it, we're gonna be right back in the same ballpark.
Well, and that's, yes, and we're,
You basically gotta live with what you're doing. This-
well, I'm hoping the market turns. It is a
Sure.
commodities-based market. Right now, the market is the worst. Well, I can't say it's the worst it's ever been, but,
Well,
it's.
this for us, because we have to take it so far.
Right, but I mean,
That's okay.
That's right.
but the commodities, I'm saying from a commodity standpoint, around 2009, I would say probably was very similar, to the market right now. It was downturn in the economy and similar, the demand wasn't there. The problem right now is we aren't exporting. China is basically that's not being recycled.
Okay.
Mr. Bay.
Single max. Well, the armies were taking. The double ones, they weren't taken. I don't know if it's because they couldn't fit on top of their wagon or they don't sleep together. They weren't taking the double.
Okay, thanks, John. Thank you. Next up, treasurer, we have Ted Bridges. Modifying the 2023 budget for the treasurer's office for additional sales tax distribution. Can I get a motion, Mr. Second? Second, please, Mr. Denisha. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Good evening. So this is modify the 2023 treasurer's office budget for additional sales tax distribution. As we are fortunate in receiving more sales tax revenue, we need to increase the appropriation line for our shares that are going out.
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, this. Question was on the breakdown. Why is it? Okay, Count Elizabeth, do you have the sheet there?
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
Right
okay.
here, she does.
Okay, I do know.
Count Elizabeth. So am I to tell them they're gonna get 123,534? And if so, why is it in two different accounts?
The distribution is on two different formulas. Half of the distribution is based on the census population, and half of it is based on real property values. So we update those two numbers and it calculates
Okay.
the percentage of the total, and I would take out.
Thank you very much.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Yes.
Next up, county attorney, Mr. Button. We have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Allied World Insurance for medical malpractice insurance coverage for insurance for county employees, medical providers. I get a motion. Mr. Hall, second by Mr. Beck.
Thank you. This is an annual resolution that we bring before years ago that's been decided that it would seek to secure coverage for our medical providers in question of the public health or community services department in jail. Those medical providers obviously had this as a concern because when they are performing functions for us, they have separate employment outside of their county involvement. They wanted to make sure that they were covered here. This only covers their medical coverage or medical exposure. This does not cover their general liability and casualty. General liability and casualty is still covered by the self-insurance fund and managed through my activities of my office. This only deals with the medical malpractice claims that they arise in the rendering of care.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next. We have a resolution setting a date for a public hearing on proposed local law to be determined for the year 2024, rescinding local law number 7 for the year 1994, banning dangerous weapons in county-owned property and vehicles. Mr. Forsythe, motion, and Mr. Smithers. Dave, did you want to talk to this?
I didn't plan on it. I'm good with it as it is, but, I think it's long overdue. We've talked about it a few times. I think it'd be good for the public to hear about this, but, you know, I look at the land that we have behind the transfer station and behind the, Potsdam transfer station. People that may be hunting in the morning, going to work in the afternoon, different scenarios, and, I think it's long overdue to get it.
Mr. Hall.
I would just ask Mr. Button if he has anything he wants to comment on this.
Thank you. The local law that you have before you was originally passed in 1994. When it was passed, it was drafted in such an ambiguous way as to include ingress and egress from county lands if the county lands still happen to have a structure on them. That meant that individuals that may be entering onto the property in which our solid waste transfer locations are for the purposes of hunting or going to a parking lot associated with a structure and carrying a firearm within their vehicle were arguably in violation of law. As you all know, a little while ago, the United States Supreme Court issued a decision known as the Bruin decision. The Bruin decision was a challenge brought by the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association to the licensure process under Penal Law Section 400 for possession of a firearm. In response to that decision, the state of New York decided very quickly to pass what is known as the CCIA, the Carry Concealed Improvement Act. Included in the Carry Concealed Improvement Act was a designation of tons of places around the state of New York. Originally, it would have accounted for essentially 91% of the state of New York based on anecdotal evidence. Included were the governmental buildings. So the CCIA actually passed a statewide law that banned the possession of firearms within governmental buildings. In passing that law, they essentially made the local law that we have before us superfluous. And now, as you also know, I have been involved, the board has been involved with a lawsuit known as the Antonyuk lawsuit. The Antonyuk lawsuit is a challenge to a number of different provisions of the CCIA. Included in that was designations of sensitive locations in the vampire rule. Vampire rule had essentially flipped the rights of the Second Amendment on its head, indicating that rather than start from the operative belief that you could possess a firearm unless designated not to, it changed that so that all locations automatically became sensitive designations unless they professed or expressed that they did not want to. While the court struck down the vampire rule at the Second Circuit Court of Appeals and through the district court, what they did, though, was go through an analysis. And that analysis said, historically, and from a traditional standpoint, there have been three types of location that we have always recognized as being sensitive. And we do believe that the New York State law will be upheld with respect to those three locations. Those three locations being schools, hospitals, and governmental buildings. So it is unlikely that the CCIA's sensitive designation for a governmental building will be struck down, making it all the more apparent that this local law no longer serves the purpose and was actually far more expansive than even what the law should permit under the Bruin analysis and the CCIA analysis for it.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Steve. We have another resolution requesting a pardon from the planned closure of any prisons in St. Lawrence County and urging Governor Kathy Hochul to consider the impact additional prison closures will have on the local economy of the Northland. I get a motion. Forsythe and Mr. Ray. Who wants to speak to this? Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would particularly like to thank Assemblyman Scott Gray for proposing the idea of asking the governor for pardons for our local prisons. I think it's important that we be proactive. we're gonna see major job losses in Canton and Potsdam from the loss of college students and faculty and staff. We've already been hit with losses and jobs at the closure of the Ogdensburg Correctional Facility. 7 prisons have been closed in northern New York for the past decade, and not a single one has the state found a sustainable redevelopment use for any of them. They're all slowly. I read recently an article which I found very, very strange and upsetting, in which the state is saying, "Oh, we need to close more prisons because of staffing shortages." And the Correctional Association of New York State, which is a group that opposes prisons, wants the state to look at the prisons farthest upstate for closure. And anyone who's familiar with our New York State correctional facilities and our NYSGOBA staff is aware that when we see prison closures in northern New York, where many of our prison staff are from, it hastens more retirements, it hastens more attrition, it hastens more people to leave the profession, and it causes more people to decide not to go into corrections, because where once they had a very good chance of finding jobs and having long careers in their home communities, a lot of them are getting very nervous and having serious second thoughts about getting jobs in corrections, for fear that they'll be stationed at prisons downstate, where the cost of living is much higher, where St. Lawrence County has one of the lowest housing costs in New York State. And New York State is constantly talking about how they have a serious problem finding housing for people downstate. And it is ludicrous for the state to look at closing prisons up here when our prisons up here have repeatedly shown that they are the most efficient to run. They have they're some of the best run facilities. They have people show up for work on time. People have low rates of filing workers' comp and a host of other things. The point is that our prisons in Governor and at Riverview and Ogdensburg and across the North Country are some of the most effective prisons in the state. And it's important that we, as a body, and we as leaders in St. Lawrence County, send a strong message to the state of New York that we do not intend to go quietly into that dark night if they decide to close any more prisons in St. Lawrence County. As the chair of the committee looking at the correctional facility that has been closed, we are reorganizing the task force with the St. Lawrence County Industrial Development Agency. We're having a meeting Wednesday at 4 o'clock, and we're going to be discussing strategy to be proactive so that we can send the message to Albany that we do not intend to sit back and allow our major employers to be slowly dismantled and our people thrown aside when it was our communities that stepped up and took prisons back when no one else would. So please join me in supporting this resolution. Please work with us in the months ahead. Please, plan on sending the message to the communities across St. Lawrence County. This is not just an Augusta Governor issue. This is a St. Lawrence County issue. The people who work in corrections, whether they are teachers, whether they are CSEA workers, whether they are NYSCOBA or administrative staff, live in all the communities in St. Lawrence County, and as well as the correctional facilities in Franklin County and in Jefferson County. So we need to stand up together, and we need to send a strong message to Albany that this idea of closing our prisons and putting more at a time when the streets are not safe is just absolutely ridiculous. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to thank Assemblyman Gray as well. He sent an email right out with what he proposed to do. I thought it was a great idea to be proactive on this approach. They've held these prisons over our heads for 15 years now. It's a shame, and I can't even imagine. Look at the camp, it's, we look at Clifton Pine Hospital up there, they're struggling. It's just, what else are they gonna do? So I hope there's some common sense that steps in. Yes, correction officers aren't really wanting to be correction officers. You can't discipline them anymore. You can't put them in the box for 90 days. You got a couple days later, they're back out. It's awful. And most of my buddies all retired from the correctional facility, and it's not like when yeah, hopefully there'll be some common sense that comes to this, but so here's
First, I agree with everything that the chairman has said. I totally. It's a far cry from what it used to be. And I would like to be added as a co-sponsor to this resolution, please. Thank you, Mr. Sanders.
I would also like to be added as a co-sponsor, and I agree with everything that's been said very well by Legislator Reagan. Doesn't make sense to me that our prison population is going down when the crime rate is going up. Seems the attitude in Albany is to not want to imprison people. They have bail reform, which they should seriously reconsider. Our prisons do serve a valuable purpose. One of my strong beliefs is that one of the main functions of government is to keep the citizens safe. They do that by putting criminals in jail. So please add me as a co-sponsor.
Mr. Sheridan.
I would also like to be added as a co-sponsor. I remember the good old days back in the 80s, for example, when the jail population in the state of New York was up at about 73,000 inmates. And that's when the crime rate was low. And now it's gone out of sight, especially in New York City. It's not safe there. And it's not safe up here. All you gotta do is pick up the papers now and see what the sort of articles that you read that you never used to read years ago. There's a huge difference, and it's here. So I'm concerned over the safety aspect of it as well. And but now that number I was telling you about, 73,000, it's now down, I think, to 32 or 33,000. And they're just working on it, making lower, lower, and lower, and lower. And the other thing I'd like to add is I think half of the population in these correctional facilities in the state of New York right now are mentally ill people who are in our facilities, which makes it even more difficult hiring the people who want to do the job, to take care of them, and then the safety of the officers as well. So I'm gonna be a co-sponsor as well. Good resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Denisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor to this resolution as well. And I can't add, won't attempt to add any more than what has already been said. I have a number of friends that are currently correction officers. I have friends that are retired corrections officers. I've heard some of the horror stories from, not from the guys that are retired, but from the ones that are currently officers. And, but the one thing I would like to, the point I would like to make, we talk about closing the prisons in the northern part of the state, which has already happened. And, I don't know if it's at one time they did this Albany did this under the guise of cost savings. When, if a prison sitting on some of the most valuable real estate in the world, not just New York State, but in the world, if it were truly if they were serious about this, take that closed Sing Sing on the Hudson River and bring some of those folks up here. If they're truly, but I fear they're doing much what the state always does, they talk out of both sides of their mouth.
Anyone else? Mr. Webster.
I can't add anything to this, but I would love to.
More discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next up, we have Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act and Lewis.
Thank you.
Establishing the budget for the New York Scion Initiative. Can I get a motion, please? Mr. Forsythe, the second. Mr. Denisha. Hi, Pam, go ahead.
Thank you. We received our year 3 funding through the New York State Department of Labor Scion Initiative, which supports the DRC Disability Resource Coordinator position in the One Stop Career Center. The DRC works in collaboration with the Social Security Administration to assist individuals with receiving SSI and SSDI, but still want to work, as well as those individuals with disabilities that access the One Stop Career Center and the services provided through the WIOA program. We are on our 3rd DRC in the last 2 years. This is a unique position in that the DRC can build the position to what they want it to be, as long as they meet the requirements and regulations set forth by the Department of Labor. I feel the first 2 individuals did not like the lack of clear direction that is expected when trying to develop a new program across 33 local workforce development areas that serve different overall demographics. What works for one area is not necessarily going to work for St. Lawrence County. There have been and continue to be growing pains and bugs to work out, but our current DRC is embracing the challenge. So this resolution establishes the budget for that year 3 funding.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Okay, so up next, we have Vacancy Review Committee. Ms. Doyle.
We have one item to present to you tonight. You may recall, and it might look a little bit different than you've gotten used to. We had 2 vacancies in. If you recall, Legislator Terminelli requested that the position being abolished be included so that you could review the information associated with that position. And what we decided to do with that is to pull the last time it was filled. So because we're looking to abolish, we're not asking the department to refill another vacancy. We're taking the one on file associated with the last fill. So that's what's in your packet. And then the one that the director will speak to is the request to fill and to create. Go ahead, Bruce.
Thank you. This resolution is to create and fill the secretary one position in real property. As Ruth just mentioned, this would abolish the account clerk position. The account clerk and our office was promoted to a real property aide. So we're real fortunate to have that, opens up that position. Secretary one position would be very closely working with the coordinator's job. And that person creates all the tax bills and processes the assessment rolls and the tax rolls. So that would be next thing here for tonight.
Any questions? Okay.
So, last finance committee, I mentioned to you that I would bring you a little bit of a summary update on where we are. I know toward the end of the year, when the interim final rule was updated by the federal government, that there were concerns raised about making sure that the funds appropriated in their current form would be spent, or there was a plan for those items being spent. So I wanted to give you an update on that. I included here what was in the resolution, which divides out the 20.9 million associated with the funds that we've received. In that way, I want to remind you, we have already spent the 13,000 with the ballistic vests for probation. You provided 100,000 associated with the new unified command vehicle. That was a compilation of sheriff's office funds, public health funds, and American Rescue Plan funds. So those are 100% spent. Wanted to let you know that we're at 10% spend, that first bullet there of the 5 million for emergency communications equipment. We've appropriated, as I mentioned, 5 million. There's 509,000 spent so far. So there are very frequent conversations going on, if not daily, at least 3 times a week, associated with the number of needs in the creation of this equipment. Testing is also going on, I believe this week or next, associated with our equipment to make sure that it will meet the requirements to improve the system. The emergency services director is also out in district meeting with folks. You will be notified when those meetings happen in and around your districts to attend. In the discussions that have occurred for the last 2 years, really, around a model for the replacement of radios, similar to the model used in Jefferson County a few years back when they replaced their system, but also so that we understand the gap for a number of reasons, the largest of which is why we haven't come to a radio system replacement was the lift it would be for our municipalities. And so the board was generous in the provision of funds to help. And from that perspective, my understanding is municipalities are working on their budgets. Great opportunity to be best informed so that they can make decisions and budget appropriately. But also so the board understands if there's a gap, what that looks like. And so those conversations are happening now. We'll bring you updated information as we have it on those.
If I may, I went to a meeting last week, one of the fire district meetings, and it's well worth going to that for the information. Some of it we've already seen here, but it's great to hear the feedback from the fire chiefs.
And certainly in your districts makes it a unique discussion, step down from the one at this level. So I certainly would encourage you as well. And if you don't know when those dates are, we'll make sure that Matt reaches out and gets those to you. We recently had an update from the IDA. The board was approving of, not necessarily taking formal action, but of some shifts in the funding sources and the funding streams that the IDA is using. So that is well underway. The $3 million set aside for broadband development. We are, of that $3 million set aside, $111,163 spent, or 3.7%. My understanding is they've also had some very active conversations. The lion's share of the funding in that award went to Slick, who I believe is now moving forward with their projects. So we'll keep you updated on that. Certainly an area with the lowest spend that we want to keep you informed of. 42% spend of the utilities of the 3 million for the water and sewer development. That was the 2.9 million set aside, 1.25 million has been spent so far. With plans, I believe, for full spend this year or early next. The 5 million for county capital, you've just appropriated. We spent some of those funds on our schematic design and architecture for our public safety complex project, but that has been 100% appropriated. And as you all know, we'll be kicking off very shortly with that project. That will all be spent this year. And then the last of the 900,000 for ash tree removal and reforestation, we are 451,000 spent on that effort, or just about 50%. So as the chair of the Clifton Pine Hospital Board was here tonight, we've made a 90% spend. As I think you heard in all of the work that they're doing, that those funds in the amount of 270 of the 300,000 haven't been spent, but the expectation is they will be this year as a part of their renovations. And in our contracts, many of which include a 90-10. So we want to make sure that we receive all of the filing paperwork and information we need so that we can put that into our system for the federal government for the accounting and auditing purposes. So we gave them 270,000. Once they complete that project and share with us the spend and what it was spent on, we'll release the remainder of those funds. Are there any questions? Oh, one other area I wanted to let you know about that you'll hear more from me shortly about is the EMS, the EMT, and now also paramedic training. We're 56% spent there. 100,000 was dedicated to that. 56,000 has been spent. That is an area that I've been talking with both the folks at Clarkson as well as our department about potential need beyond the ARPA funds. But we'll be talking more about that in future meetings. Are there any questions associated with reporting?
Mr. Forsyth.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ruth. Do you have any concerns about what's been appropriated as opposed to what's been spent that might not get spent? And should we be considering optional plan Bs on some of it?
I think, as I mentioned, with the lowest spend right now being the 3.7%. I know the committee just met last week. I think that there is some urgency to getting those projects going. Right now, that would be my concern. The projects, water and sewer, are moving along better than I anticipated, so I expect those will also be spent. Those would be my two areas of concern right now, but I would not make recommendations yet for reappropriation.
Okay.
End date is December 3rd, 2025.
Yes.
We've got the water and sewer project. Did we reach out to all the municipalities that we awarded to find out whether they're really going forward with their projects?
I believe there's active conversations with the municipalities, but I'll confirm that to get those updated totals.
Yeah, just if some community has decided since then that they're not going to go forward with their project, that would be one that we would then reallocate.
Absolutely.
Mr. Demusha.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Ruth, this is on the broadband development and installation. I just learned a couple days ago that there's four of my constituents that they live on a reasonably isolated road. TDS comes in on one end, and actually comes in on the other end. You've got a mile and a half in the middle that these four people, or there's four residents are living, and TDS says, well, not us. So it's and I've been talking with Jason and Heidi about this, and it gets back to the a couple of years ago when Dan Wolf was here, from Dank, and he was talking about the ROI, and where they had to have 10. They figured they needed to have 10, a minimum of 10 subscribers per mile to recoup their investment. I got thinking about that, and more within the last day or so. And if I look at my district, which is one of the the only one thing bigger is Mr. Perkins. But with the exception of a few hamlets and villages within my district, I can't think of any place that there's 10 residences on a mile road. It doesn't exist. So that, I don't know what we do about that. And I understand that, whether it's, no matter who the provider is, whether it's TDS or Slick, whoever, they're in it to make money. But we've also got a significant portion of our population in St. Lawrence County, especially with the remote learning. We've talked about attracting people to come from other areas to come up here and live, and you can conduct business remotely. A lot of places that are attractive where people might like to come, there's no broadband. So, and I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if anyone does, but it's still a problem. And all the money that we're putting aside, and I think back to the electrification of America. And this is the same. It needs to be looked at on the same scale. I'm going to shut up now.
Probably you only have 4 people in your district that are having that issue.
This is only 4 people. I know there's a greater number, but there's 4 that.
There's many, okay. Yeah. As far as
I think I brought this up when the original conversations of this money were going on, and I sent out the one email constituent in my district last Friday or Thursday, just to thank you for Mr. Jeanette had helped her. And she went to StarX or SpaceX, whatever the Elon Musk system is, and Starlink. Thank you. And I think it's $500 for the package, and you can take it anywhere. You can take it with you anywhere. And I think the charge is like $100. You can buy different levels of it, but $100 a month. And John was telling me when he hooked it up, he was above Slick's reception instantaneously. If there's money left and Slick and PJ or whoever doesn't want to extend it, I say buy a bunch of them systems. I think there was 2,000 originally that were without it. And I did the math, it's $1 million. $500 a unit, we buy the unit, they pay the subscription and be done with it. And when we talked about last year on the way down the NISAC. So if there's any stragglers, I say if it works in those remote sections, I'd love to know. It must. I'd like to confirm that it does, but I think we ought to buy 1 or 2 of those just to see where they work and where they don't work. And we'll get John all trained now on installing them. So, but they love it, and they were doing it with a dial-up Verizon network prior to that. So it is possible. Everyone has to think slick and all these fiber, but you can do it without. So that's why I was kind of asking how much is left of these different things, because if it's not, I think that'd be.
it's Webster.
The other thing too is I've talked to people about this too, and they're more than willing to pay a deposit on this unit because of the cost of it. So you have people who are willing to pay the deposit, they're gonna pay their own, it could save, it's a thing of the future. I hate to say it, these cables, it's getting harder and harder to maintain them, harder to get anybody out there to maintain them. This is kind of the future, and they're gonna pay the deposit on it. It wouldn't hurt to maybe try to set up a program when we started setting a few of those up in different areas to test to see how it is working. And if nothing else, you're probably gonna see these cable companies go, hey, I think we can take care of that road.
Anybody else?
Okay, so that concludes the ARPA update for this meeting.
You want to go right into the administrator's report?
Sure.
Okay, we have resolutions. Modifying the 2024 budget for the county administrator's office to purchase an envelope printer for mailroom. Get a.
So this resolution has a dual function, dual purpose. I'll start by explaining where we are now and what this resolution will allow us to accomplish. So our mailroom staff is very small. We share a position. We have 1 person on the print shop side. We have 1 person on the mail side. We have our supervisor, and then we share a position with DSS reception. That's how it's been up until 2024. So we looked at a couple of things. one of which has nothing to do with the envelope printer, but has a great deal to do with our new way of doing business. And that is in this decentralized model that we're looking at and need to continue to evaluate how successful we are, what the needs are, and where we want to go. What we've recognized is that we don't have a functioning option for delivery and pickup of mail at our locations in Messina, in Ogdensburg, and in Governor. And so this, in budget discussions around the envelope printer, we looked at the idea of the bulk purchases that departments have to make. Some used a great deal, like social services, others periodic uses like Board of Elections, real property, treasurer's office, in large numbers, but each office utilizes them on a regular basis. And so what we end up with in some cases are envelopes that sit around for a long time because you certainly get a deal. Our purchasing office is the best at finding deals, but you may end up with bulk envelopes sitting around for a long time. They end up with glue sticks. They're not good quality over a period of time. So we thought, let's evaluate if in fact we have our own printer, we buy all blank envelopes. Every department can on demand get the number of envelopes that they need, and that's the direction and recommendation we're making here. So we looked at it in budget. The reason it's in a resolution is we moved those funds into targeted contingency. We also have the board approved the position to become one in each department. So we took two halves. We made a whole position in DSS reception because they were struggling to cover both vacations, but also leaves and maintain the reception office at DSS. And we made a whole position out of the half that we had. So the overall impact staffing wise is one, but it's in two departments. So we made those two positions whole. They're being filled now. And we'd like to be able to get both a schedule and when we're short staffed, a backup schedule to make sure, especially now with 911 in Messina for the year, but also our offices, social services, probation, chemical dependency, to be able to make sure they have pick up a regular and predictable. Right now, staff going to those offices will stop in Canton, pick up the mail, drop it off. That's not a good way, knowing now that we're going to stay in this decentralized model. So to this point, we're asking to move the funds that are in targeted contingency in the amount of $22,900 to allow us to acquire the equipment. We're working through hiring the staff member to enhance the internal services of the mailroom and print shop.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next up, modifying the 2023 budget for the assigned council program. I get a motion, Mr. Forsyth, second. Mr. Sheridan.
So this is a tune that I don't like to sing and return to you with another request for modification for assigned council. You'll remember after the budget was adopted, they doubled the rates, and that was not at all in congruency with our budgeted appropriation. So we came to you as indicated here earlier in the year for the same amount. We hope and expect that we will be able to get half of those funds reimbursed, that we're over our appropriations. So the first was for 200, we should see at least our obligation reduced to 100. And similarly here, to be able to close out the bills for 2023, we request this resolution be approved.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on, modifying the 2024 budget for the Department of Highways for paving projects and authorizing an additional 44.35 miles of paving. Mr. Lightfoot.
So I've asked our highway superintendent to join me again here at the table for any questions that you might have. But what I want to speak first to is commend the investment that the board has made over the last 2 years, 10 miles each year. As a result of our review and recommendation of our results of the prior year. And that has been handled, one, because it's a great need that we have, but two, we've been able to add on to the existing contractors' work in the field. And somewhat, I think the superintendent will tell you on the fly. But we've had great contractors. They've been able to get the materials. They've been able to complete the work. And many of you were able to see that work when we renewed the highway tour this year. A tremendous job completed with very little notice, quite frankly. And I think that now that we're looking forward, I've asked and had Don put together a list for this year that would actually go out with the bids that we do every year for that average around 30 miles. But we'd like to more than double that this year and have the investment of $5 million to do it. Don, do you want to speak to how we would accomplish this?
Yes, well, part of the strategy that I employ here is looking back at roads that we invested in, say around 2010, 11, 12, years where we recycled and then just did a oil and stone surface treatment. And the roadways were never finished, as far as with the top course of asphalt. So we've been trying to maintain those with county maintenance funds, local funds, to maintain those roadways. And to get the biggest bang for the buck out of that investment that the county did, over 10 years ago now, I think the best way to extend that service life is now to go out there and put the final coat of asphalt on those miles of road, rather than waiting another few years where it will need to be recycled and then topped at basically double the cost. So using the CHIPS funds in another manner to deal with these roadways that need more work, and then using this additional funding to extend the service life of the investment that we made. So by doing that, just simply having basically an overlay forest going on the top, we aren't needing to start at ground zero. That's what miles.
Mr. Slivers. Don, you have in this resolution, it says that the county has 573 miles and we plan on paving approximately 30 miles annually. That means that we expect them to last 19 years. That's my question. They don't really last that long. So.
No, sir, and that's part of the problem why we need to invest additional funds in that. And I think that's the saying, by doing an overlay on these roadways that you've already invested, instead of waiting till they're at a point where they need, basically double the investment. It's money well spent servicing those roads before they deteriorate even further. So it's a, as far as when you look at your national, data, that is the time that you need to invest in a roadway, not wait until they're in such disrepair that they need so much work. But that's really where we have been, and I think we're, as county administrator said, I think the wise investment that Ford has put forward, trying to get us from just needing to wait in such disrepair, by going to this methodology, I think it can really help bring our payment scores up and reduce the overall cost in the long run.
Mr. Hall. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've received a number of complaints and feedback from Madrid residents on the quality of the road. The county was 14th down there. That was the recycling in the oil and stone. And thank you for being responsive to those questions. I really appreciate that. But my question is, I understand the costs and the labor savings involved in that process and the benefits there. The fact that I think you described it as we have roadway that remains unfinished, right? There's the topping. I support this proposal. I think it's great. My concern just procedurally is if we're categorizing that recycling and oil and stone approach as a cost saving measure, efficiency measure, are we not really just separating the last step and paying for it at a later time? And if I'm misunderstanding it, you can certainly clarify. I'm not an expert on any, but if you could help clarify that, And anything else you want to add to that?
Sure. The process of the recycling that I was speaking of back in 2011, for example, was a cold in place recycling. Process that we use predominantly on our roadways at this point, again. And then we put a hot top on. The process that was used in Maverick was a hot in place recycling, which is a totally different process than what I was speaking of and what we employ on most of our roads. So as far as the putting a surface on a hot in place recycle, it's much tighter asphalt and basically the oil and stone was the final seal on that product. Whereas cold in place recycling really needs a top course asphalt put on it to ensure the longevity. So two very different processes where the cold in place, you end up with basically a binder course, which is a larger aggregate in a more open graded material. So then you would have the ability for the water to penetrate and you'd have more frost damage. Where the hot recycling, it's oil added into the existing top, it's rebrowned, and then just basically like a driveway sealer. It was an extra add of protection. We could have gone without it, but it was an investment in a sealer on that would give it a comparable life cycle to regular hot mix.
Maybe this help if I may just tag on question. So what's the relative life expectancy of the hot in place versus a sort of full retopping?
The hot in place with the surface treating is very similar, excuse me, similar to the regular hot mix. We employed the same thing in the hamlet of Norfolk as well, with the surface treatment with the hot in place, and that doesn't require you to adjust the grades. It reduces the impacts to water infrastructure in the streets. So trying to prevent damages to municipalities, because the county doesn't own infrastructure underneath the hamlets roadways. But even though it's a county road, the water main, the sewer main, all that infrastructure underneath the roadway is actually the property of the town, not the county. So if we were to damage that infrastructure by a county operation, I'm sure the town would be coming back to the county for repair of that infrastructure. And you'd already have a project that you did on it and spent the funds, then you'd be immediately tearing that up. So trying to, in those situations, avoid that type of a situation where we would be paving it, causing water main break, and then immediately digging up a newly paved road. So that's a lot of the reason why we employed that methodology in those certain areas. And I think that's a good location to do that is in a hamlet area.
Mr. Forsyth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don, how many county roads, how many miles of county roads are full of disrepair? That really need addressing? Any idea?
I can get you that number. We have our road system broke down into approximately 1,100 segments, and we score every 1,100 segments every year. I have that data, but that's a lot of data to digest.
Sure.
But
Yeah, I don't want to see 1,100 pages there. Yeah, I remember doing a criminal around three. It was terrible. Yeah. But, so anyway, I'm kind of curious at that. The other thing is and I'd like to thank you for bringing this forward. You and Ruth coming forward with this idea. When I first heard it, I'm like, boy, if we're gonna do it, now's the time to do it. You know, if this is the time to do it. Someone, I think it was Mr. Sheridan just a little while ago, said the safety of the jail. Government is here to provide safety, you know, our roads and our bridges are safe. Everyone drives to and from somewhere. And it's our responsibility. And I wish I hadn't heard sales tax was kind of flat. I wish I hadn't heard that the bridges have overage now after $5 million, but these are the things we're gonna have to live with. So if we're gonna do it, this is like the year that we better be doing it. I can't see us waiting. I'm afraid it's what's coming down the pipe. So I'll support it, and thank you very much for bringing it forward. I think it's a great idea. I think it'll show constituents we do care. We're trying to address the safety of our residents, and not just our residents, anyone that travels. But I think it speaks volumes to what we can accomplish when we put it. Thank you again for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think this is actually great, spend for our money for the majority of the people traveling. It's great. The roads are, got a lot of potholes in them. Another month with a little more snow, they'll probably be nice and smooth, but, for a short period. All in favor? All right, opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you so much, John.
Fourth quarter financial update.
Yes, so you may have noticed in the summary report this time, it looked a little bit different. And Karen and I have been spending time trying to look at making our reporting a little more non-budget person friendly, if I can put it. And really trying to make it so that anyone who looks at it could have the same impression. And what we recognized was in our initial reporting and what we've done some in the past, we always argued about the idea of whether a negative will mean over or be good, or in parentheses will be good or negative. And so rather than that, we said, what if in this case, and it became very clear to us, adding an extra column, very basic, what's under, what's over. Now, the two summary reports that you received, one is against your adopted budget. So I feel strongly what you adopt for us to work with throughout the year should be one measure. And then that gives you at least a way to focus in on particular areas of concern, perhaps. So then when you see it's over budget, you can go into the category report, which measures against the next item, and that's the modified budget. Each month, including tonight, you take action associated with modifications to what you've adopted. And so when you see against adopted, there may be an issue. You look in the category report against modified, and you can see actually if, in the action the board's taken during the year, if there remains a problem. And in most of our departments, so just taking that first summary report, got about half our departments that are at this point over budget. But when you look in the category report, most of those end up with revenue shortfalls associated either with the reporting period for the state or federal government funding, or as a result of performance during the year. And those I think we've talked about in prior month or prior quarters, but we certainly can dig in a little deeper here. What I'd like to mention to you though, on that front summary page, we've got 7 departments that when you look and compare, like I just illustrated, looking at that modified, 7 of those come back in under budget against the modified. So not as big a concern because they brought the board action, they've modified the budget, and then they've either spent or collected revenue attached to that. In the category report, it also gives you, and on the summary report by fund. So we started informing the board probably 2 years ago now, maybe 3, about our other funds. We used to just report to you on the general fund, but we thought it important for you to see what the performance is. It's slightly difficult if you aren't familiar necessarily with the type of fund that it is to understand all of the ins and outs that happen from a transfer standpoint from the treasurer's office, who provides the funding, but just an overall 20,000 foot view so that you can see that fund's performance in the quarter. On the fund summary page, at the top, it really captures where we are. Now, as you know, we're continuing in January to pay bills from December, or depending on where they fall in the year. And you'll see those unaudited results in May, like you do every year. with the treasurer's office provided. But this gives you an earlier picture, at least what we know now of that performance. You can see there at the top of page 1 of 8 on that category summary, 93% of our personnel spend, 46 million of modified of 50.4, so we're at 93%. The equipment, that generally is modified associated with the grant coming in. You typically aren't approving unless we've set it aside in contingency, separate equipment purchases. So those generally, emergency services is the classic one for that. The transportation system is another area where you see big spends. Those roll over in years if we don't receive, but we're at 16% of that spend. Our contractual is at 88%. Of that modified budget of 164 million, we're at 144 million. But that's also, I would caution you, that's where you see those decreases in contingency. And then you see them increased in other budgets. So what you appropriate to contingency allows us in both targeted and untargeted areas to make moves during the year without pulling from fund balance immediately. So that's a little trickier, but on your board share is that updated contingency that each resolution that goes through, we track that total spend so you can follow that throughout the year. You see our revenue is tracking at 275. That's 91%. Again, much of which for that fourth quarter may not have been collected yet. And to the point, I pulled up for 23. Bear with me just for a moment. The total budget for our sales tax, I believe, was 71 for this year for 23, and we came in at 80. We may have projected 82, I believe, and we came in just behind that. But we had upped our revenue expectation from the low 60s over the last couple of years. So our expectation this year is 80 million, which is where we ended the year last year. So we'll watch that closely and keep you updated on that. I did want to just point out a couple of areas throughout the summary report, and then certainly open to your questions. Some department heads are with us this evening, but if not available, I'll certainly get information back to you. Community services, an area we've been spending a lot of time talking about with the revenue associated with the billing system. They are at 65% as of this report to you, but also working with the department and completing their quarterly report. They have approximately 1.6 million pending, which we will watch again closely to make sure that that comes in. But that will bring them much closer, not to the 12.2, but our hope is we'll get you better numbers as the year and our credentials are approved to make sure we leave as little money behind as possible. Another area that typically gives us a little bit of difficulty is in the indigent defense. If you look in there, we're at 11% right now. We've had some recent staffing changes. Our hope is to clean that up and catch up what both the state has owed us from prior ILSF contracts and what they'll now make us whole for, or at least half of, for the increase in the rates. Let's see, one other area I wanted to mention. So are there any questions at this point?
Okay, Dave, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You hit on community services. That was one of my concerns.
Yeah.
The other one I'm a little concerned about is
Yes.
revenue.
Yes.
And that's off by $500,000. And I'm just wondering if we can get a where that's attributed to. I got a feeling it's a downstate revenue, but I don't I'm just guessing. But I know just even in my business, change of cars are slow the last year or so, so maybe it's just all around. But you know, that's substantial, I think, you know, happening down. So
I have that pulled up in front of me. You did mention it at the time. And it seems as though our downstate revenue came in just behind 2.65 we budgeted. We came in at 2.58. So not as much as we had been seeing as a reduction. Governor came in just 16,000 under revenue. Ogdensburg came in over. We budgeted 188 there. They came in at 205. Maybe because we put signage up, now people can find us. Messina, we came in spot on 236,000, just maybe $100 difference. And Canton DMV is really where the difference came in. 429,000 budgeted, we came in at 366. So I think to your point, there was some other areas, not just downstate, that contributed to that. So, but we're watching that and working with county clerk. Certainly happy that board approved the fiscal position in that department. So we should be able to focus her efforts and make sure we're tracking that well.
Great.
Do you think, or, could you ask the county clerk whether the decrease in the revenues coming into the Canton DMV office is because people are registering their vehicles online with the state, which then shortchanges us? And I think that we need to look at launching some sort of educational campaign with the people of the county to make them aware that when they, while registering their vehicle and doing stuff on the state DMV websites is seems to be the new and growing thing, that they are shortchanging their own county. And I know that years ago when Senator Ritchie was the county clerk, she made a concerted effort to educate people about the need to use our own DMV offices, and that had helped increase our revenues. And I think that it might be time to make the effort to get the word out again, because whenever you go to any DMV offices, or at least when I go to the Ogdensburg office, there's no wait. It's a very pleasant experience, and people do a great job. And our county is very lucky to have the kind of DMV offices that we have, where people often are able to get their business done quickly and efficiently, while in other places there's just one office in the entire county, and the lines are forever. So it's not my call, but that's my call.
Thank you.
So in the past, I remember the DMV used to send notices through the mail when you needed new registration. Fill it out, send it in. And I believe it came to us and right here, and we got the revenue from it. Now, if it goes online, we don't get that, correct?
Right. Also, I believe you sent it to Albany.
So can we initiate that, sending those notices out again?
I will talk with the county
That
clerk.
that could help. And we only get 12% anyways, correct?
That also changed.
Change too.
Well, the online can increase. And we were one of the only non-beneficiaries of that change. But we could, yes, and we'd be happy to have that conversation.
Just Webster.
When the pre-addressed envelopes come in there, it's Albany's address.
Yes.
So they're sending it right back to themselves when they send it to you.
Was there any objection to the changes we've made to the quarterly report? Making it more clear, we'll continue, this is a living document, and we'll continue to try to improve to get you the best information in its easiest form to digest. So moving on, I just have a couple of other updates for you. Wanted to let you know out of the highway resolutions tonight, the work that the highway department continues to do happens as a result of the work that's been done. So as Don explained to you tonight, there were two, the bidding period that came in higher, so that required us to go back out to get some more funding, but also two that we weren't expecting. And, I think that the idea that some counties don't utilize all the funds available to them end up getting put back in and redistributed. We have been the beneficiary many times because we demonstrate great use of the funds they send our direction. So I know there's heartburn associated with some of the increased cost of some larger projects, but the balance of that is if we were in a situation where we had to pay the full shot, we certainly wouldn't like that anymore. than the smaller 5% or share that we would be required to put up. Fortunately, we are in a position to bring you resolutions like the one you approved tonight, which I am very grateful for. This is an unprecedented investment in our county road system. 20 miles over the last 2 years, and this approval of an additional 44, and again, double that investment. We are leaps and bounds from where we were in the years, both of the expensive materials, you've been able to restore funding in years where when the bids came back, we didn't have enough, as well as go further. So I do want to thank you for that. And allowing the highway department to include it in the bids this year will make a big difference in their plans for the work this summer. Wanted to give you a quick update and answer any questions you may have on the implementation of our credit policy in solid waste. They have had a remarkable January in that they've collected just this month $45,892.33. And that is as a result of 5 customers who came in and paid in full what was owed. We also have 7 notices that have been able to go out, we have not heard back from. And we do want to talk with you about the remaining outstanding items. We'll do that a little later. But certainly we're seeing progress. We'll be meeting with the union with regards to labor management associated with the account clerks that we've created, but also looking to get those positions in clear policy guidance because they work remotely, they work at our transfer stations, so that they're very clear on what the rules are and they can enforce them as they work with the members of the public who utilize the transfer station. So great progress being made there. And the last item I have, unless you have questions, is an update. We are 2 days away from our extension to the search for our next public health director. We have 13 credentialed candidates, of which 2 are immediately qualified. We're seeking additional information from them. Talking with the chair of our search committee, Legislator Hall. We have some additional candidates being credentialed. So for the board meeting, I'll be able to give an update and what our plans are going forward. If the committee wants to move forward, interview those qualified, or what our approach will be moving forward. Approximate spend so far is $12,000. We did extend our reach into the Albany area, which we did receive quite a bit of interest. So we'll keep you posted on that and hope to bring you a recommendation. Looks like it'll be a little bit further out than we originally intended, but our goal is to get a qualified candidate that we can bring to the department to the county. Questions?
Okay, moving on to old business. Mr. C. We have a resolution modifying the 2023 budget for social services budget for training fees, medical assistance, and foster care. Can I get a motion? Mr. Sheridan, Mr. Pegg. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. As I mentioned last week, I was here for services. We would have another budget modification coming to you as we are working to clean up and close out the 2023 year. We had a number of areas that we had some unanticipated costs for that came up, but mostly on the children's services side of the house. So this budget mod is helping us move some money around to try and take care of those. If you take a look at the under increased appropriations, the 2 largest items were adoption subsidies and institutions. To try and explain that a little bit and answer any questions ahead of time that you may have, those are 2 areas where we may not have a whole lot of control over based on the kids that come into care, the number of kids, their needs. They have special needs, and again, they require institutions. 1 child going into an institution can cost well over $150,000 per year, unfortunately. In 2022, our average number of kids in institutions was 17. 2023, that jumped up to 20. It's not something we can foresee. It's not something we can control over. And that adds to a large amount, that $680,000 on that line. Additionally, our foster care expenses were higher for a number of reasons. We had the foster care settlement, which was finalized and raised rates for foster care across the board. And we also have adoption subsidies. So we work hard to get kids out of care. When we get kids out of care and they go into adoption, those kids will continue to receive the adoption subsidy until the age 18. And if they have special needs, that can go up to 21. So that's another area where our expenses were higher than we planned on. And it's kind of a weird kind of a catch-22. We want to get kids out of care. Primarily because it's best for the children and for the family. But when you look at the expenditure of taxpayer dollars related to it, when a kid goes out of care through an adoption process, it may take several years for that child to age out to the point where we're not carrying that cost anymore. So because of the adoption subsidies, the additional kids that ended up institutionalized, we ended up with some figures that we weren't really prepared for. We didn't budget for worst possible scenario on everyone. So we just can't do that. So this is why we are where we are, and why we are going to need to move some of this money around, including some contingency funds to balance this out so we can close out 2020.
Mr. Burke. Go to the adoption. They equal to what the foster care payments would be.
It depends on the child, sir, really what their needs are, and they vary greatly. And I don't have those numbers right in front of me. I couldn't give you any reliable information on that. If you'd like, I can look that up for you and get back with you on that one. With the differences between the two. The adoption subsidies are substantial.
Thank you. Sir. Any other questions?
I would just offer, if I could, the balance from 2023 to spend of 3.9 in contingency. We have spent to date 995,000. So this 314 and $43 that's requested. There's still room in the contingency budget in the target.
Other questions? So when these children are adopted, do they end up back in the system at all? Is there any percentage of that?
I haven't been tracking that. I think the recidivism rate, I don't like to use that word because it's more of a criminal justice term, but that rate of coming back into the system for children that are adopted into families is actually lower than kids who sign themselves out at age 18, for example. I'm scared they're having kids because they can't come back in up until they reach a certain age. We've had kids leave at age 18 and then decide, well, hey, I'm not making it and I need some more assistance, and then decide to sign themselves back in. I can check with my adoption unit and see if they have any statistics on that for me. I can get that for you. You have it. Sir.
Everyone in favor?
I,
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Joe. Okay, off the committee report. Oh, no, we're not up there. Any other old business? Mr. Webster.
Yes, I give everybody a paper. I'd like to put a resolution for next week and have some people take a look at it, give me some ideas. In support of the state of Texas, calling upon the governor of the state of New York to render aid. It's a big problem. The amount of people that are going across down there is, although we have them up here, if we can start at someplace and actually make it work, maybe we can move it all the way around the country. So I hope to see some people support me on this.
Any discussion? Okay. Any other old business? Any new business? Seeing none, off the committee reports. Mr. Denisha, Cornell Cooperative Extension Board.
Chairman. We, Cornell Cooperative Extension Executive Board met on Thursday, January 25th. And we had our annual election of officers, signed some agreements, actually signed an agreement with the county. We adopted our affirmative action, diversity inclusion plan. And just a couple of things I want to share with everyone. Some folks may be aware, but Cornell is going on a regional ag team. We're going a bit of a different direction, the regional ag team. And there'll be more to more to come on that. Yeah, the regional ag team will not, the service that was provided by the existing regional ag team service will stay the same, but it's going to be delivered in a different business. Some highlights that I wanted to bring up. And give me. Awful, you're looking for it. You had it. Please bear with me. Okay. Just some highlights from the 2024 4-H year schedule. In February 29th, Maple Tour season begins. March 16th, weekend of March 16th is Maple Weekend. Something I know that this will be a lot of folks will like this on the 25th of April, 4-H shooting sports orientation night. You know, and that's something that Cooperative Extension and 4-H have been very good about. June 2nd, June 9th and 16th, actually holding 4-H shooting sports. And the fair will be actually the St. Lawrence County Fair be coming in toward the end of July. August, and State Fair will be the 21st of August through the 2nd of September. And, our next meeting is Thursday, March 28th.
Thank you. Mr. Sheridan, Fish and Wildlife Management Board, Region 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This doesn't work.
Oh, 2 minutes.
There's
Now it does. Okay, on December 7th, I participated in a Zoom meeting with the Fish and Wildlife State Board members, which is not the same as the usual Region 6 Fish and Wildlife Board that I'll be reporting on later on after this report, but it has a lot to do with it. That December 7th meeting focused on concerns regarding the impact of the trout stream management plan implemented 2020, and it's had on the state's trout stocking program and the future impact this stream access verification program will have as landowners decline to allow anglers to access their property. So there's concern. So the state board met over it. And the initial contacts with landowners suggest that there will be a significant drop in the landowners' participation across the state, and the deeper that they move into the verification program. The trout stream access verification program was initiated by the Bureau of Fisheries to validate public access to stock trout streams reaches on public lands that currently lack landowners okay. But the DEC Fisheries has sent out over 1,000 inquiries as to whether to these private landowners, trying to see if they can make a plan where the public will be allowed to be on those properties, and they're concerned over the significant drop that they're not getting answers back. So and then on Region 6 Fish and Wildlife Management met on December 21st, and we also discussed the adjustments to the 2003 trout stream access plan, including their desire to engage the service of its members and anglers outside of the organization to provide direct follow-up with the landowners that did not respond to the DEC letter of inquiry regarding fishing access and trout for the trout streams that are located on their properties. The Bureau of Fisheries is welcoming the assistance of the Fish and Wildlife Management Board to expand unbiased access to fishing. And in order to properly manage the process, they've developed an operational method that conveys the roles and responsibility of all parties involved. Their hopes is it will improve accountability and more effective management plan. There's specifics of the plan that they have that if you're interested in, I could provide if anyone's interested in the specifics of the new plan that they have. The Black Lake fishing, the Black Lake boat launch issue fell under the old business section of the meeting. And it was agreed upon to send the letter that our chairman, Alvin Montana of the Region 6 Board, is sent to Peyton Taylor, who heads up the Parks and Recreation and Historic Preservation. And that letter is in response to the resolution that we passed here a while ago. It took a while for this letter to be written, but it was written. The Black Lake boat, for the Black Lake boat launch issue that we were talking about. And in his letter, he requested that the boat launch be moved on the priority list for the state parks. And someone, Scott Gray, got a copy of that letter as well. So did Senator Walsnick. And they're also involved. They've been on the phone a couple times a month with me on waiting for this letter that was supposed to have been written a while ago. So the next meeting will be March 21st, 2024, something like that.
Thank you. Fishery Advisory Board is Ms. Terminelli. She's not here. We'll move on to Governor Fair Board, Mr. Smithers.
Fair Board is scheduled to meet February, let's see, 6th, Tuesday, and they have not met recently, so I have nothing new to report there.
Maybe we can move into highway solid waste.
And I have nothing to add to what we've already discussed tonight in regards to the highway solid waste.
Okay, thank you. Industrial Development Agency, Mr. Reagan.
The IDA did not meet in January, so I read some report.
Oh, okay, thank you. The Recreational Trails and Advisory Board has not met either. They will meet next month. St. Lawrence River Valley Redevelopment Agency, Mr. Forsyth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We meet tomorrow at 4 o'clock in Louisville. On the agenda is selection of officers for the upcoming year and CDEIP grant applications for all your entities. So we have 20,000, with allotment of 100,000 altogether towards them. We've been funding projects through throughout St. Lawrence County over the last several years. I encourage anyone who's got a project to bring it forward. We'll talk about those start tomorrow. I think the due date's April 15th for the application.
St. Lawrence County Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Webster.
Yes, they haven't met yet, but I do have a lot of information. They said where they've been doing a lot. The booking platform is up and running. The colleges, Ogdensburg Airport, they full swing with 29 properties and 80 plus interest points. One of the things, and we talked about this, is like Tiffany's working on trade shows and stuff like that, which is great advertisement. The chamber has actually become a great way to advertise because advertising is getting so expensive. So it's a great way to get it out, and they're actually hitting the people that are really using it more than anything. The Senate passed a bill for the VRBOs, but the Senate Assembly turned it down. So that's something that we should be looking at, because that probably will pass, and when it does, we're going to be looking at new local zoning laws for passing for taxes. Probably a lot of the local towns will have to have different zoning codes and stuff when these are going in. There's Kate's got a new coordinator, Katie Berry. She's part-time. She's full-time, she's part-time as the headquarters. She's also a part-time communication specialist right there in Canton. the chamber got a $275,000 grant from the EDA, which is they'll be able to use with the help of the county funds. One thing with the grants is it's not really grounds on the boots on the ground. It's not it's more the executive end of it, and that's where they take the county money to basically implement it and get it going and getting all the stuff done. So they're busy over there as normal. Everything seems to be going really good. And I want to thank you for everything that you're doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burke, Soil Water Conservation District Board of Directors.
Soil and Water met last Thursday. It was an organizational meeting. Bob Andrews re-elected chair. He's been chair for almost 30 years. Done a great job, very dedicated. Adam Book is vice chair and treasurer. Soil and Water is gearing up for their annual tree sale. They'll be placing the order soon. Ash tree removal has been complete for the vendor. There were 2 complaints throughout the whole process. The first complaints were resolved, and they said that the vendor went above and beyond solving any concerns of landowners. So all the track along the St. Lawrence River is complete. They'll be inland the next project.
Thank you. Next up is discussion. Do we have a meeting?
We have a need for negotiation, litigation, and appointments.
Can I get a motion to go into executive session? Mr. Forsythe, Mr. Fay. All in favor?
Aye.